Well, we are going to start. Thank you for the present, ladies and gentlemen, student colleagues, and distinguished guests. It is a true honor to welcome you all here today. Thank you for your presence and genuine interest in the topics we will be exploring together. Your commitment to knowledge, dialogue, and critical thinking is what sustains and advances academic communities such as ours. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The suffering caused by war is a sobering reminder of our collective responsibility to advocate for peace, justice, and the protection of human dignity. In this time, the role of academic voices is more important than ever. It is in this spirit that we open today's dialogue representations of Palestine in emerging world order. This roundtable invites us to examine how Palestine is portrayed and understood in shifting global context, politically, culturally, and symbolically as power dynamics involved on the international stage. So to do the narratives that define region in struggle, resistance, and resilience. Now we are privileged to be joined by a scholar whose work offered critical insights into this representation and who challenge us to rethink the frameworks through which we engage with Palestine and the broader Middle East. And finally, we extend a very warm and heartfelt welcome to the expert speakers joins with us. Your presence enriched this conversation profoundly, and we are deeply grateful for your participation despite the difficult circumstances. Your voices, perspectives, and lived experience are essential to this dialogue. Thank you once again, and welcome to all. Dear speakers, each of you will have 15 minutes to present your ideas. Should you go over time, I will respectfully ask you to proceed to your concluding remarks so we can stay on schedule. Please check the chat. I will point out the timing issues there. It's okay? Well, I want to introduce Dr. Wessam Amer. Wessam Amer is a visiting professor and researcher at Cambridge. Since 2020, Dr. Amer has been Dean of the Faculty of Communication and Language at Gaza University in Palestine. He was a Fulbright scholar and researcher at Harvard University Center for Middle Eastern Studies throughout the 2022 academic year. Prior to this role, he was a Marie Curie Fellow and postdoctoral researcher at Newcastle University in the United Kingdom. From 2017 to 2020, Dr. Amer obtained his postgrad from Hamburg University in Germany, completed his doctoral studies between 2011 and 2015. Dr. Amer is the founder and the first chair of Middle East Center, chapter of Marie Curie Association. His primary professional interest in teaching and research center around topics such as political communication, violence language, conflicts, warfare, and contemporary geopolitics, with a specific focus on terrorism, security, and radicalization, particularly in the context of the Middle East and beyond. He has published several papers on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Islamic movements in the Middle East, and Islamophobia. Welcome, Dr. Amer. Thank you for your presence. Go ahead.
All right, thank you so much for this very generous introduction. It's a great pleasure, honor, and privilege to join you in this very important conference. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Also, I would like to thank our colleague and brother, Professor Moses, for his great efforts to raise the Palestinian voice. Also, I would like to extend my thanks and appreciation to all colleagues at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. It's so great opportunity for me to join. Also, I'm very happy to also to join Professor Ayman Youssef, with whom I'm also in other project working for the past, let's say, 17 months. So it's so great to see you here, Dr. Ayman, and very happy to meet also Dr. Saeed Abu Heja from Najah University. So honored to be here today, brothers and sisters. In my presentation today, I'll talk about, like the way how international media cover, represent Israeli-Palestinian conflict or affairs, and mainly I will shed light specifically on the Israeli genocide in Gaza. But I try to connect. This is the PowerPoint. I think hopefully it works. I think it works, right? And you can see here my presentation.
Yes.
So, is it only the presentation, right?
Yes, only a presentation.
Okay, excellent. So, in this presentation, I talk actually about the way how the international media, mainly German media, American media, British media, also other media outlets, because in this paper, I work on different media, mainly the English language media outlets. But I'm hoping to extend this, to extend this paper, and I would like to invite colleagues at your university to join this project if possible, because for me it's very important to see the other side. I know the Spanish media. I don't speak Spanish, but I would love to see how, let's say Portuguese or Spanish media outlets represent the Israeli genocide in Gaza. The only thing about I know about the Spanish media is the media in Spain, how they are really do their best to represent the Palestinian voice, or at least the to show the Palestinian narrative. Generally speaking, about the way how Israel deals with the Palestinian journalists, and actually here I would like to quickly highlight, because I have 10 minutes and I have to stick to the time. So it's starting from 2020. Yeah, okay. So here I worked actually with a friend and colleague of mine about, on in a paper to highlight the Israeli violations of the Palestinian journalists under the humanitarian law. So as you can see here, uh, there were over 200 19 journalists in Gaza since October 7th were killed actually during the war. But also there are hundreds or at least tens of journalists have been killed, before October 2023. But since October 7th, 2023, there were 200 or over 219 journalists have been killed. Uh, Also, it's not only about the individual journalists, or their families have been, targeted. Many journalists were killed alongside their families in Gaza. Also, during the ground invasion, in different parts of the Gaza Strip, many journalists were arrested, and this, usually under the international law, journalists are eligible and they should be free to move from one area to another, from one place to another to cover the events. But unfortunately, this is not applicable to the Palestinian journalists, because They are not allowed to move actually within the same city. So there is like a big restriction on the movement of the Palestinian journalists in Gaza. Also, in the latest or like a few couple of months ago, possibly you have seen how Israel targeted or airstriked at the tents of journalists in Nasser Hospital, and at least one journalist was burned, and then other two journalists were killed in the same airstrike alongside other journalists got injured in the same airstrike. So these are like just examples of Israeli violations of Palestinian journalists' right, and how also Palestinian journalists actually who are on direct line of the whole attacks. They face the direct attacks of the Israeli aggression. Of course, in the other side that is not really much highly highlighted is the psychological trauma, not only for the journalists, but I think for everyone in Gaza. So you can see how Israel tries or has been trying for the past period, for the whole months of the war, to silence Palestinian the voice, including the targeting of the Palestinian journalists. And this would reflect a clear lack of institutional protection of the Palestinian journalists. So here, I know like in international media outlets, they try to speak about the war. They try to be objective, but this is not the right way. But from my personal experience, because I was in Gaza during the first months of the war, the word or the terms like genocide, massacre, war, conflict, all these terms and others would not really describe the real situation, the real suffering of people, the real atmosphere, actually. What we see in media would only maybe like if I do exaggerate too much, this would really respect or represent maybe 20%, 30% of the reality of the image. But then there is like at least 50 to 70% of the whole image is lost for many reasons. One is for example, the political interest, the political ideology, the language, and so on that affect especially the international media coverage of the Israeli genocide. And also, here I would like just to quickly to highlight some results from my latest publication or latest work on the Israeli genocide in international media. The way how American, British, German, Australian, New Zealand media talk about the war, like label the war, is basically Israel-Hamas war, ignoring the whole context for the whole suffering. And the risk for having such kind of labeling is to focus the war specifically on Hamas rather than all Palestinians. This would ignore the Palestinian civilians' suffering and humiliation in the war. Also, um, such kind of labeling is not really, I would say, always is political to show kind of balance between Hamas and Israel. But then Hamas is part of the Palestinian community, and it is part of the Palestinian, I'll say, society and political spectrum, but it is not everything, you know. But this is how the Western media manipulate the facts on the ground. Another way, actually, of manipulation and bias in the media coverage is, adopting the Israeli claims or Israeli allegations. One is, especially at the beginning of the war, how Hamas beheats babies, and Israel claimed that there were beheadings of babies, and without exaggeration, you see, like all the media, Western media headlines highlight this allegation without even investigating, without even exploring the whole allegation. Another way is, about raping hundreds of Israeli women, and another allegation about the tunnels in Gaza. Of course, there are tunnels in Gaza, but as a person, as a civilian, as academic who has lived, for a long time in Gaza, and I was in Gaza during, the past years. We have never seen any tunnel under university or under a school or under a hospital. But then the way how Western media justifies Israel attacks against the schools, against universities, against hospitals is by using the Israeli allegations that Hamas has tunnels under the hospitals. Also, it's very interesting actually to see how, the embedded journalism, embedded journalists accompanying the Israeli troops, and mainly actually there were only two German journalists, and one of them was the editor-in-chief of the Der Spiegel, and he actually accompanied, he was placed in an Israeli tank to accompany all the Israeli forces or Israeli army alongside from the border to Gaza City, and then he was under concrete and solid mentorship actually during his visit to Gaza. I don't want to call it a visit actually, because he was like accompanying the Israeli soldiers. He was totally under Israeli observation and, of course, censorship. Um, of course, at the beginning of the war, maybe this question is not really valid, but this is like from the beginning of the war, to start the questions, especially in Western media interviews about condemnation of Hamas. The risk of such, language about condemnation is to legitimize, any Israeli attacks or Israeli actions against Palestinians. So if Palestinians condemn Hamas attacks, then this would show their opposition or their criticism and their rejection of Hamas attacks. But the other risk actually is to show legitimization of the Israeli attacks. So quickly here, of course, there is like, much about the conventional language. For example, the terms like slaughter, genocide, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, you would never seen such kind of terms in Western media. And mostly the use, because this is like mostly linguistic side or linguistic analysis, they use like transitive verbs to refer to Palestinian attacks, rather intransitive verbs. For example, saying Gaza has died, like, died or killed. So, for example, 35 Palestinian children died last night. The word died here or the verb died does not imply any agency, any responsibility on the doer, on the person who committed the crimes. But I'm happy to speak about it in the discussion. So here also is very important thing, and I would like to finish with this: the missing context. The events of October 7th have always been represented as if the starting point of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict or struggle. The Western media does not refer to the historical, to the political, to the social context. before October 7th, we were living under Israeli siege for 17 months, and no one talked about it. Especially the Western media, start talking about October 7th as if, that Hamas has initiated the conflict with Israel. And you can see how Western media manipulate the public opinion and actually, yes, and, try to form the public opinion in the West in a certain way to condemn Palestinian actions. And Palestinian action has never been represented in a way to resist not only the Israeli siege, but also the Israeli occupation. Because the Israeli occupation as a context has always been missed in the Western media. I think there are many things here to speak about, but I would like to say here it's very important. And once we talk to once we analyze Western media, I think it's very important to insist on the historical context that gives the readers, gives the listeners, give the audience a great knowledge about, to understand how the conflict started. Of course, amplifying the Palestinian voice is very important, not only in the Western, or let's say American or British media, but also in the Spanish media or Portuguese media. So yeah, I would like to stop here, and I'm very happy to join the discussion and to answer any question if there is. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wessam. I believe there will be many questions about it. Thanks for the time. Well, we are going to continue, and I have the pleasure to introduce now Sayed Abu Hihle. Is correct my pronunciation? Well,
Angela.
thank you. He is a Palestinian human geographer, poet, and radio show host who is currently working as a lecturer of political, economic, regional development, and environmental geography at An-Najat National University in Nablus, Palestine. He is the founder and director of the Center of Global Consciousness, CGC, an independent media and cultural exchange institute dedicated to build bridge between Palestine and the world. Mr. Abu Hihle holds a BS in International Development Studies from the University of Iowa and an ME in Political Geography from the University of Northern Iowa, USA. In the past 20 years, he worked with Palestinian public and private organizations in the fields of international development, public relations and protocol, and small and medium enterprises development projects. He's the former director of international relations for Nablus municipality, 1997 to 1998, and the former director of public relations at An-Najat National University, 2005 to 2007. Since 2004, he prepared and hosted a talk show on An-Najat University FM station called Global Perspective, in which he interviewed many international personalities who visited Palestine on key contemporary political, economic, and cultural issues. He has conducted academic research on the political geography on Palestine statehood and the multidimensional obstacles facing its realization. Thank you very much and welcome, Doctor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Ms. Isis. And I really would like to extend warm thanks to our brother Musa and to his colleagues at UNAM. And I really remember fondly when we visited you in UNAM 2015. And I also would like to welcome all the colleagues, Professor Wissam, Amir, and Professor Ayman, our dear friend from University of Jenin. And I see Daniel also here, his face. Hello, Daniel. Hello, wa sahlan. Who had the pleasure of visiting me also in Nablus, all of you. Well, first of all, I would like to say that we are talking about the representation of Palestine in times of live streamed, continuous, non-stop ethnic cleansing and genocide. And really, when we talk about the historical context, as Professor Wissam has said, I think we can talk about prior to October 7, which is now a milestone like BC and AD. Maybe you could say BOCT 7 and AOCT 7. Like it's a new calendar. It's a new calendar that we're talking about. So if we talk about representation in a historical context, let me first start with a poem, and then from there I will go into the historical stages that we went in the presentation to the present time, of course in a timely fashion, and because I think if I can just share this poem with you, share screen. Can you see my screen? Can
Yes,
you
we
see the
can.
screen now?
We can
Okay.
see.
This is a poem I wrote in April 2002 during the Israeli invasion of Nablus. And now it became a very famous poem. Recently, it got published in Columbia University, and a month ago, it was published by a poet friend of ours from Nepal in Hindi and Bengali, and sorry, Nepali. Anyway, my fast bike. And later you will see why I use this poem. I rode my bike, he rode his F-16 and tank. I sang my song, he shot me and gained his rank. I'm the terrorist, he's the victim. I'm a martyr now and did not go to school. He's the civilized one, and I am the fool. No matter what I say, his story is right. Every day he tells you, terrorism we fight. My tree uprooted, my house blown, my land confiscated, my grandmother's moan. I am imprisoned. They cut my flesh, they break my bone. Do not kill me today. I have a better option, the kid tells the Israeli soldier. Let us race and see who's faster. The one who wins will become master. You on your tank, I on the bike. He who reaches first to the land of love will tell the story for the coming generation. So basically, it's a battle over narrative, but can you imagine we are talking about narrative for oppressed people undergoing a live stream genocide now? So historically, Zionism, when it first started to representing the Palestinian people, first it said its motto was a land without people for people without land. So Palestine for them was empty of land. And as Maxim Rodinson says, the French sociologist, he said, Palestine had people, but it was empty in the colonial mindset of the Zionists because Palestinians were not culturally worthy of being there. Okay, this historically changed. Then Palestinians did not exist. Golda Meir said there is no such thing as Palestinians. This representation, and of course, this narrative was taken very well in the Western landscape of media. The change started in the first Intifada. First, in the after the Lebanon War and the massacres in the Lebanon, the Sabra Shatila, but the image has started in the first Intifada with the changing of David and Goliath, the kids throwing stones and being shot, and then their hands being broken, and that's why Henry Kissinger, I remember, told the Israelis, advised them to cut the media, so they will not, the people around the world will not see the Israeli soldiers breaking the bones of children. Of course, this continued to the second Intifada, and the people could start seeing that a military might against, basically defenseless civilians. The war escalated in the second Intifada, and then Palestinians start using weapons. And then Israelis could say now it's a war between equal parts, but it's not a war between equal parts. And then when they started using tanks and air jets, Palestinians start using the bombing. And then in 2005, they stopped that strategy because they knew that this is harming our image in on the international arena. Now, we're talking about after 2005 and the changing images of Palestinians, they start to resort to what we called, everybody was asking, where is the Palestinian Gandhi? We were going through marches, we were going to civil, peaceful marches. I remember I was part in many marches in 2002 where Israel just opened fire on us directly. One march in March 30th, 2001, 6 people got killed in that march. Everybody, we tried to use this nonviolent resistance, but of course it did not work. Against also the Freedom Flotilla in 2010, ended up of a massacre of the people who came to aid Palestinians in Gaza. The Great March of Return in 2018, where hundreds of people got martyred and killed, sniped in front of the whole world, all came up until, also in 2022, 2023, in the uprisings in the West Bank, we had hundreds of people being killed. I wrote an article, this is in January, 2023, and I asked President Abbas, I told him, save us half a million martyrs and call for a one-state solution. This was in January 2023, before October 2023. I said, we are going through the model of Balkanization. The right-wing government in Israel, there was a peace process that had no peace. And the whole of Israeli society was going to ethno-supremacy and fascism and right-wing. And we were going through the model of Balkanization. The settlers start attacking villages, burning stores, killing people like in Hawara. And I thought this was a model going into the massacres and genocide of the Balkan. So I said, maybe we should start calling for a one-state solution, a language that the whole world will understand, and maybe we can have a coalition for ending apartheid and calling for a one-state solution over the land of Palestine. Of course, this did not happen. October 7 happened, and of course, the Israelis used all the media, all the Haspara, to change the narrative, as Professor Wissam said. All the lies, spreading all the lies, the 40 beheaded babies, the mass rapes, the babies baked in ovens, and the Western media, of course, happily took and parroted this narratives. And as Chomsky would, as also Professor Wissam referred to, manufacturing consent, it's very, very complicated. The Zionists have a lot of control over media outlets in the Western media and around the world. Now, but the avalanche, the flood of images of this genocidal war on Palestinians, especially in social media, and the work of courageous journalists on the ground. Now we have 221 Palestinians, journalists killed in Gaza and in the West Bank, just since October. And the work of really great journalists, like also some of them anti-Zionist Jews, like Max Blumenthal, The Gray Zone, the work of Electronic Intifada, the work of podcasters and courageous journalists like Owen Jones, Katie Halper, who's also American Jewish anti-Zionist, Simon Zimmerman, a lot of people And of course, the use of social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Now you have the Israelis and the Western governments trying to block Palestinian content on social media. Facebook, of course, we face a lot of restrictions and censorship on Facebook. Instagram, you have people with million followers, then suddenly the profiles are gone. TikTok, they're trying to ban TikTok, in the United States because this are decentralized networks that grassroots people can use and they can organize and can spread the word. Now, prior to October 7, Western governments were helping the Israelis in what I called occupation management. Occupation management. For 600 days, okay, after October 7, they were helping in facilitating genocide and genocide management. Up until just the past few weeks, when it became almost intolerable for the whole world to see the starving of children, the starving of whole societies, the mass murder of women and children, the burning of people alive, this avalanche of imagery, they could not, people, with conscience, people with damir, as we say in Arabic, life conscience, could not bear this. And of course, under the weight of this changing order, because Israel, basically Gaza unified all the oppressed people around the world, as our colleagues from UNAM have said. It's embodied this oppression of empire. And the international capitalist system that because Zionism is embedded within this international capitalist system that is embodied in empire and Western colonial powers. So the way we need to move forward, first of all, as the discussion in the first session with Professor Kassab and Professor Bamia, we need definitely an international coalition to end Israeli apartheid. And this international coalition and build networks that actually bring all the oppressed people together and fight for social justice. Because, again, Gaza, but with this high human price, had showed the extent to which empire can go to silencing opposition. The Zionist movement is embedded within empire, and the Zionist lobbies are actually in cahoots. For example, just to give you a very stark example, the Zionist movement and the Zionist lobby is in partnership with the military-industrial complex in the United States. A lot of Zionists own huge shares in military and defense industry. So basically, actually, which is very horrific, they are killing us and they're making money. And who's paying for this? The taxpayers in the United States and in Western countries, in European countries. They kill us and they make money. They make profit because they are in organic partnership with the military-industrial complex in Western countries. So basically, these are my basic thoughts about this. I have, written some. Okay, Palestinians are okay. Now, Gaza. This is my last point, and we'll keep it for discussion. Gaza, tried to expand the axis of resistance to Zionist control in the Middle East. Now we have a changing world order. Yes, it is an emerging changing order. It's a multipolar. There is China, there is Russia, there is the BRICS, there is the global South. Gaza really unified the global South, led by countries like South Africa to offer an alternative and also to defend. They're talking about international law, when with their case in the ICG, ICC, and look who's standing against the ICJ and the ICC. Really, Zionism and Israeli apartheid has destroyed the international system in front of our own eyes. And the Western hypocrisy now, Gaza has exposed it. All the lies, all the hypocrisy in front of all of us. So now that's why the Western governments are forced to take some action, too little, too late, okay? Because again, the avalanche of this representation of the human cost that is so horrific, and really international solidarity and the work you do, and this seminar and this workshop is part of really this international solidarity. I will stop here and then we'll take it in the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A powerful, meaningful poem, I think. Thank you for your presentation. And finally, I want to introduce Dr. Ayman Talal Youssef. Ayman Talal is professor in political science and international at the Arab American University in Palestine. He got his PhD degree in Middle Eastern Studies from the IMS University in Baroda, India, in 2000, and he obtained Fulbright Fellowship, the study of USA foreign policy in South Carolina, in 2002. He published articles in many local, regional, and international journals. He research interest our Palestine question, political elites, civil society, students, and youth movements, democratization, the U.S. strategy in the Gulf and the Middle East. He likes to volunteer in international projects. He got many international awards to travel abroad, including Erasmus Mundus Fellowship to Brussels in 2009, a Midesat Fellowship in 2010, Marie Curie Fellowship to Coventry in 2013. Very recently, he started developing deep interest in studying the Palestine zone and student movement and their role in social change and democracy in Palestine. He has already published one full research paper in Al-Quds Open University peer-reviewed journal in 2011. Although he does not have publication to talk the issues of trauma and political level, still he believes that trauma is wide interdisciplinary concept that to be dealt with at all fronts, including the political one. Bloody clashes with the occupation in Palestine, terrorists, and other policies of torture, including security checkpoints at the roads, night arrest, and other policies. All the create conducive environment for traumatized Palestinian, especially children and jail people. Therefore, he believes that he has to prove a sort of partial remedy for this phenomenon at the Palestine level by adopting popular now. Violence results as new tool for liberation to save lives and research. Welcome, Dr. Ayman, and go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much. And really from the bosom of my heart, I would like to extend my deep sense of appreciation and thanks to the Autonomous University of Mexico. We had the opportunity to visit Mexico in 2008. And in those days, I had been to Guadalajara, where I met Daniel and other friends, Jorge, and of course later on I met Musa in Nablus. We are three, Palestinians on this session. Wissam Amir from Gaza, currently in the UK. I'm speaking from Jenin, north of West Bank, and Said is speaking from Nablus, again from, and I think this is a good representation of the Palestinian Palestinian academia. Of course, I'm very much happy to be with Wissam and with Said Abu Hijli. Said is a real rebellion in the field with his thought, and of course in civilian and more peaceful way. And I do appreciate also the contribution of Wissam Amir, where I have many ideas will simply intersect with his with his thought and with Said as well. In the emerging world, I think Palestine after 7 October is really making real change. What is emerging world when it comes to international relations theory, international politics, is the world is moving from unipolar, where the US is still dominating power in the in international system, to more bipolar or multipolar system. Still, I believe China is very much hesitant to play a role of balancer. Still, the Chinese, although they have made very much inroads, very much progressive in the field of international economic diplomacy. I believe China is emerging along with other BRICS power, with other BRICS, the role of Brazil in Latin America, the role of India in South Asia, the role of South Africa in Africa, and of course the roles of Russia and China. So the world is changing, and I think what is happening in Gaza, different events, is really fastening and accelerating this process of emerging and a newly emerging world system. The world is fed up with what Israel is doing, and the American blind support to Israel, whether it is a Democratic Party or a Republican Party. The US in its political setup is supporting colonial settler occupation in Palestine, and I think this is very much visible from different transformations that is going on in different corners of the world. The new alliances also emerging for the sake of Palestine. We remember these countries when there is a vote in the UN. We remember all countries that standing with Palestine. We remember the great role now played by countries like Spain in Europe, Norway, Ireland, Malta, Slovenia, Portugal, even there are some changes in the official positions and official foreign policy of countries like France, the UK, Canada. So there is, I think, flood of changes in the foreign policy of these countries when it comes to Palestine, when it comes to the, to the Israeli occupation. And I think Palestine, due to events in Gaza, has occupied the minds and the hearts of many people around the world, especially in Latin America, from Mexico in the north till Chile in the south, passing through, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Brazil, and Argentina. In the last vote in the UN Security Council, in the General Assembly, I think only Paraguay voted in favor of Israel. We remember these countries. In one of my TV shows, one of my TV interviews with Al Jazeera before, I think, 6 months, I was hearing a citizen from Gaza. He was shouting in Arabic, "We wish if Gaza is bordering Nicaragua or Bolivia. We wish if Gaza is in Latin America." So even ordinary people in Gaza, not only the educated and the academics, even ordinary people in Gaza, in West Bank, among 14 million Palestinians, remember the official positions of these countries. And during my visit to Mexico, I felt this warm feeling in the heart of Mexicans and other colleagues and other people who are coming from different parts of Latin America who are standing hand in hand, standing hand in hand with Palestine. I think these changes are very much crucial in international relations, although they are slow. Although they are slow, we believe the realist, pragmatic approach is still dominating. And we believe international relations and international politics is totally dominated by the equation of power and interest. But I think with the strong positions, taking by many of these countries under the pressure of public opinion, of course, these countries are trying to mirror, are trying to see the depth of love, the depth of mind and heart of Palestine in the mind of heart of these countries. And they are trying to do all these reflective evaluation and reflective review of their policies. So I don't exaggerate, even I go to the extent that there are certain changes within international relations theory, the liberal, humanistic, approach is still dominating in favor of making changes for the sake of the oppressed people, for the sake of the forgotten, communities. And I think with Gaza event, with what is going on now, even in the north of West Bank, where I stay, in Jenin, Israeli forces evacuated 25,000 Palestinians from the local Jenin refugees camp. They did the same thing, in Tulkarem, as if they are forcing a new kind of internal displacement, a new kind of refugees on the Palestinians. But still, I think the Palestinians are very much, having intact right for self-determination, right to return. And I think they are maintaining their narrative very much solid. What is the main contribution of this war of aggression, this war of the ethnic cleansing on Gaza? Is the solid position of the Palestinian narrative. It is no more, the Zionist or the colonial Zionist approach that has been dominating, in the last, 50 or 60 years. So we expect, even increasing number of countries that, taking, the position of Palestine. Take, for example, South Africa, when they lodge a judicial case in the International Court of Justice against Israel. So this partnership between Palestine and South Africa in terms of building, justice, in terms of building, bridges for freedom. Although Palestine is a small, tiny country, we have nothing to exchange, with the world. We don't have, huge commercial relations. We don't have, oil. Still, I think the world is supporting Palestine, not on the basis of these narrow, driven interests, as it is in the realist or in the pragmatic approach. So I think, taking this into consideration, the transformations in the world public opinion. Today, we have 30 to 35% of the American student movement, American boys and girls in the eminent American university, from Harvard to Columbia to Princeton, they are openly, supporting Palestine. They are openly saying Israel is a colonial settler, occupation. This is a new phenomena that we need to study. One of my students in the PhD of international relations in our university, in the Arab American University, he is having double citizenship. He is a Palestinian and American. He is going to write his thesis, the changing position of the American students, and it is impact, on the American-Israeli relations. As you know, these people, young boys and girls, generally vote for the Democratic Party, a progressive, very liberal. Some of them are new left. So even with the American society from inside, from political paradigm inside, I think these changes are very much so. There is a huge international movement, not only of people, of course, the voices of people, the voices of community is strongly emerging, but there are changes even in the official foreign policies of many of these countries. And as I said earlier, to study the world in terms of people and nations and in terms of countries is crucial for the Palestinian diplomacy. There is also one trend even in the social media. We wrote an article, I published it in the Journal of Social Studies. There is huge digital activism. Why this, this overthrow, this huge movement? I think the social media, we have hundreds and hundreds, thousands of the Palestinians and our supporters who are working in the digital space, in the digital media, supporting media, international media, with the latest photos, with the latest images, with the children who has been slaughtered and assassinated in Gaza, with killing of doctors, with academics, with the scholars. So I think, there is a huge revolution in the information technology and in the digital space in favor of the Palestinian narrative. At the final day, we say it is a war of narrative. And we generally remember, we don't fight, Israel as a state. Israel is not only a state, it is an extended colonial movement that has supporters within the broader imperial system, connecting many of these countries, many of these, influencers and individuals all over the world. So I think international system is witnessing alliances and counter alliances. And I think what is going on in Gaza is really crucial in order to redefine our priorities. Gaza has become very much imminent in international politics. It is equal to Palestine. When you say what is Palestine in Gaza, due to this, huge, massive human, tragedy that is going on. When it comes to terminologies, and please, if time comes, just remind me, when it comes to terminologies and wording, it is normal now to use the word, genocide, and to use the word massacres, ethnic cleansing, killing people. And I think these words and these terminologies had been used by our supporters and by different international solidarity movement to delegitimize the occupation. We are in the process of delegitimatizing. This is a huge, not only by BDS movement. Now, many movements, individual movements have emerged in different corners of the world, from Latin America to Europe to Asia, even in the heart of Africa, and of course in many Arab countries, who are intended on the strategy of digitalization of occupation as a settler colonial occupation, the latest occupation, the last occupation. We are 14 millions Palestinians all over the world are 14 millions. We are not fighting 20 million, Jews. We are fighting, a settler colonial, entity. So part of the changes that is going on now, the 14 million Palestinians are in one hand and in one voice. All of them are raising the slogan of building a strong Palestinian narrative, a strong Palestinian identity. Because at the end of the day, philosophically, I believe, yes, to liberate, to go for self-determination, right to retain, all these are very much crucial for the Palestinians. But I think if we fail to have our independent country in the 1967 border, I think the Palestinians should invest, the 14 million Palestinians should invest in the Palestinian identity and Palestinian narrative. This is an extended confrontation. It will not end, easily and smoothly. And I think part of our strategy, if I want to define the final words, if I want to define, if I want to define what is our strategy today. I think our strategy should take different tracks. One of them is internationalization, not internationalization of solution, internationalization of conflict. We need to escalate. We need to escalate intellectually. We need to escalate, even politically in different international forums and in different international organizations. So internationalization is part of of our strategy. The second part is to build institutions in order to be prepared for a sovereign nation and a sovereign country in the future. I think the third triangle is really to proceed with different forms of resistance. Of course, we have the right to resist by all available means, including armed resistance and including non-violent and civil disobedient movement. And the final triangle of this strategy is to make political reconciliation. We believe strongly that the political split and political fragmentation between Fatah and Hamas is really hindering our efforts to invest, fruitfully in this strategy. I would like to stop here because I got a note from ISIS, and I do really again appreciate this kind of seminar and this kind of conferences. And we are waiting for your comments, your questions, and recommendations. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Ayman Youssef. Thank you very much for your valuable contributions. Well, it is essential that we seek fair and accurate representation of Palestine and its people, especially in a world where media narratives are often shaped by censorship and ideological bias. For too long, the dominant discourse has either silenced and distorted Palestinian voices, reducing a complex human reality to simplified and politicized frames. As scholars, students, and global citizens, we have a responsibility to look beyond these filters and to listen closely to those who live under occupation, displacement, and systematic injustice. We must continue to shed light on the violation of international law and human rights that persist in the region. The normalization of violence, especially when committed with impunity, must not go unchallenged. It is crucial that acts of aggression, including those carried out by the State of Israel, obviously be seen, examined, questioned, and held accountable under international standards. Silence and inaction only deepen the suffering and prolong the conflict. Raising awareness and demanding justice is not an act of hostility. It is a commitment to truth, dignity, and the hope for a just and lasting peace. Well, we're going to open the round of questions of comments. We are fortunate to have our speakers with us today and should make the most opportunity to learn from them. We're going to group the question together. The specialist will respond, and then we are going to continue with other round. Okay, it's good, Musa? Yes? Any questions in the classroom?
Yes, thank you, Professor Isis. My question will be for the three speakers, colleagues, and friends. But first of all, I want to thank them for their time and for being here with us. You know, Saed, Ayman, Wissam, that you are colleagues here, and that we have shared many times the solidarity for Palestine and for Palestinians, and the doors in Latin American universities in a particular way, in our Faculty of Political and Social Sciences, are open. And here we have many friends and colleagues who send regards and best wishes. My question for you is a comment about the resistance inside the very same movement of Hamas. I mean, the debate is open right now in public university about the role of resistance in terms of Islamist resistance, considering the changes in some other scenarios like Syria, for example. Donald Trump went to the Arab Gulf countries and shaking hands with Ahmed Shara. And the change in Syria erupted many questions about Palestine. Why Donald Trump shaking hands with Ahmed Shara and cannot speak with Hamas? I mean, we understand that Shara and Hamas is not the same. Wissam has shared with us many reflections about this before. It's not the same Hamas, and Nusra is not the same Hamas than Taliban. But that's why the very same reason, what is the role of the, not only in the past, but in the present about Hamas and in the role of the resistance? It's just a comment from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Musa. Other question or comment? Yes, please.
Yeah, so, well, it's a question for the three, really. We have heard a lot from the Western media about Hamas, but not really from the Palestinian point of view. So there have also been claims that Hamas has been financed by Israel. I'd be curious as to what you would think about that assertion, and as to how the Palestinian people feel regarding Hamas.
Thank you. Another question, comment, the last the four rounds.
Well, first of all, sorry for my voice. I woke up with a little cold, so I hope I can make myself clear. My question is mainly directed to Wissam Amer, but if any of the other speakers would like to answer, I feel like it would be a privilege for me to. You mentioned how there's been like a constant prosecution and how there's been like the direct target to journalists, Palestinian journalists specifically. And I was wondering, basically, there's been like this direct target from, or well, since October 7th. But I was wondering what was the role of this prosecution before October 7th and how this worked. Were the targets as transparent and direct as it is now, or were they like more hidden intentions in this targeting? So yeah, basically that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And well, the last, because he's a special guest, Dr. Abundis, welcome. We can't hear you. No.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Ready, yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Isis. It's for me, it's a pleasure to join here to hear our dear colleagues. Thank you, Musa. Thank you, National Autonomous University of Mexico, Isis and Marce for holding this and sharing this panel. First of all, I want to say hi to our dear colleagues, Ayman and Syed. And my question goes in the extent of trying to understand if there is any, in your own opinion, Syed, when I was in Nablus and in Jenin with Dr. Ayman almost 3 years ago, we seen in Nablus, dear Syed, all these movements like Lions Den and all other groups of Palestinian resistance with kids, with youths, just facing the Israeli occupation on its own hands, because there was kind of suffering all the things that the occupation was dealing with the Palestinian people. My question goes in the sense of Is there any other movements right now in the sense of Lions Den, the battalions of Nablus or in Jenin, all these movements that were formed in the refugee camps, which are one of the main places where more hits the Israeli occupation, or we can only like keep like the sense of resistance in the classic movements, let's say classical movements like Hamas, Islamic Jihad, of other Islamic movements. This could be my question. Thank you very much for the word, and congratulations again to the organizer of this panel.
Thank you, Dr. Abumbis. We will begin in the original order, please. And Dr. Amr,
Actually,
go ahead, please.
thank you so much. But I think I would love to give the floor first to Dr. Ayman because he's the expert in this.
No, I am,
And then I'm happy to comment, but I would like
yes,
to hear
okay.
Dr. Ayman. He's the expert and he's
But I don't know.
professional.
I think, if you prefer me to speak first, let me say if Said can start, because Said is always in position to speak out.
Okay.
Dr. Said. Dr. Said, are you there?
Okay, let's, yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Start with Musa's question about Hamas and about Islamic movement in Syria and the region as a whole. I would like to refer to the comments of Professor of Columbia, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who basically has been saying all along that what's happening in the region is the Netanyahu plan for 30 years. He says that that Netanyahu basically gave the American government his list of countries that need to be destroyed from 30 years, and the United States have helped destroy these countries, starting from Iraq, then Syria, then Libya, Yemen. All that was part of the Zionist plan for the Middle East from the 1980s onward, but intensified in the time of the right-wing government and Netanyahu. And he really explains this very well. Now, the civil war in Syria and the way it was managed, and the American support for ISIS and all this management in order to destroy these countries and make them as failed states, really the Zionists played a crucial role in that. And Ayman actually referred to the post dual containment, even from the times of the 80s, when the strategy of the Zionist was dual containment, basically to manage the war between Iraq and Iran, and basically destroy both Iraq and Iran. Who did it? It was what's his name? The Zionist strategist. My mind is. I've been under so much stress. Martin Indyk. He's the one who devised the strategy of dual containment. And then it became destroy both Iraq and Iran, and then destroy Syria and destroy Libya. And he says it very well. Jeffrey Sachs said, we conducted this list of Netanyahu. We've been working on it, helping the Zionist movement destroy all these countries. So the only Islamist model that is allowed was, the ISIS model. Now, Hamas, as a liberation theologist, nationalist movement, Islamic nationalist movement, has to fit that radical image. Now, since I don't want to, speak too much about this, because actually we have security issues here. To be honest, how they re-engineered or reproduced Mr. Shara. The one they can reproduce an image, and then but for Hamas, why they don't want to do it? Because it conflicts directly with the Zionist project. Now we are the antithesis of this growing, becoming more vicious Zionist project. It's becoming now more confrontational. They think that they're attacking everybody. They attacked Lebanon, Hezbollah. They attacked Syria. They destroyed the Syrian army. They attack in They are just because they're seeing that this project actually has no future. And I always said for Israel, this is the final point for this. For Israel to remain a pure Jewish state, they have two options. I used to say this from, maybe you remember, Daniel and Musa, for 10 years. For Israel to remain a pure Jewish state, they have two options. Either they commit a massive campaign of ethnic cleansing and get us out, or they commit genocide. I thought that it was not feasible that they do, but now they're doing genocide and ethnic cleansing at the same time. So, and also this reflects on the question of nonviolent movement. I forgot the third question by the lady. Maybe my friends will interject and then.
Maybe she wants to repeat the question or the idea.
Yeah, the woman who asked the question stood up. I forgot the question. I tried to take some notes. Then the question of let me answer the question of Danielle about Lions Den. And you know what happened 2022, 2020? You have this um, phenomena of young people who took up arms, forms of resistance, armed resistance, and they're coming from different actually groups. They're coming from the Fatah and Hamas and PFLB and different. They're mixed. They were mixed. And the Israelis went completely vicious on them. In Nablus alone, I think 80 people were assassinated in less than a year. Okay. And not only that, blowing up their homes, and then you have thousands and thousands of people arrested. And now the prison now, to be honest with you, they're trying not to. Before we used to say, "Kay they burn your skin in order to get scared. Now they wipe you out. I mean, if anybody goes to jail, they come out alive now. The conditions of life, it's basically terrorizing the whole population in order not to resist. That doesn't mean that it's not people resisting. People are still resisting by all forms, as I said, non-violent and also armed struggle. But the reaction of the Israeli army is it's not even proportional. It's beyond, as Ayman said. We have 60,000 displaced people in the West Bank now. They are blowing up homes. They want to eradicate the refugee camps. They have eradicated. I know Ayman knows better in Jenin. What's happening to Jenin camp? It's almost leveled. What's happening to Tulkarm camp is almost leveled. What's happening to Ain Shams camp is almost leveled. This is not in Gaza. Of Gaza is totally destroyed. The spacocide. They destroyed everything in Gaza, and this in history is unprecedented. A continuous massacre, continuous genocide, who's gonna stop them? And that's why our work is crucial. What's the way to stop this non-stop genocide? It's unbelievable. I mean, it's taking our psychological and physical time. We're getting actually even just sick, even talking about it. How about the people who are living it in Gaza or living it in the anyway?
Thank you very much. Who wants to continue?
Yes. I will respond. Thank you for sharing this session. And again, I second what Said said in his response and in his reaction to different questions. The Palestinian case, including Hamas, is totally different from the Syrian case. It's an independent country, and Ahmad al-Shara is replacing, Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad was almost, more nationalist, Ba'athist regime supported by Iran. And I think there is a role by Turkey and Qatar. Turkey and Qatar are playing very, very important role in pushing Ahmad al-Shara to be part of the regional order, to be part of the international system. These two regional countries are crucial when it comes to make Ahmad al-Shara more moderate and more. Yes, he is former radical Islamists. But I think there is a change in the mind and in the heart of Ahmad al-Shari and, the emerging, Syrian regimes when it comes even to open a dialogue with the US and open dialogue with Europe. And I think in some statements, even he is ready to do a settlement with Israel. Israel is a crucial variable here. If you want to look at the Middle East studies, always, try to figure out where is Israel and what is the role of the US. In case of Hamas, Hamas is part of the Palestinian national movement. We cannot deny it. Although I don't stand with many of their, political ideologies, whatever, but still Hamas is part of the Palestinian national fabric. We cannot deny it. Hamas is part of that. And Hamas still does not recognize the right of Israel, to exist in Palestine. Maybe privately they say, yes, there are some changes within the political thought of Hamas, but openly they did not say we are with peace of Israel. They don't, renounce, armed struggle and, what Israel is calling it as a terrorism. Hamas is not ready also to recognize many of international, agreements. Therefore, I believe, what happened with Fatah during, 70s and 80s, the Americans and, many of Western countries put more pressure on Fatah to change its program from armed struggle to more political and diplomatic, solutions. Same thing with Hamas. I think with the passage of time, more moderate wing within Hamas will emerge. And I think it is emerging after the assassination of the first and second line leaders, even within Al-Qassam brigade and within the political apparatus and political status. The game is not easy. There are many actors and many variables. Again, the role of Turkey and the role of Qatar and some other, Arabian and Muslim countries who are asking Hamas to be more moderate, asking Hamas to be more realistic. So there is a process of change even within the Palestinian politics, even within, Hamas and many of its. After all, Hamas is being branded as more moderate Islamic movement rather than a radical jihadist movement. Hamas is not a radical like ISIS or some Al-Qaeda and some other radical, Muslim groups and fundamentalist group. So the process of change within Hamas, I think, is going on, but it is slow because it has an ideology, and this ideology is associated, with Islam. So therefore, it is going on. When it comes to the funding of Hamas, I don't agree. I'm not a security officer to investigate whether Hamas is getting a funding from Israel, but I do totally, oppose this hypothesis. Yes, Hamas is getting some funding from Qatar, and Qatar used to channel this money through some, with the Israeli approval. But I think, Hamas is using this bulk of money, to build, a strong, political and military infrastructure, in Gaza. Overall, Hamas is part of the Palestinian fabric. I think we should go for more a kind of reconciliation process. Hamas is changing from inside, but still the Palestinians, why we supposed to change when the Israel is emerging more radical now? Israel is more settler, colonial, occupation, more radical wing government, and still we are focusing on Hamas, which is part of the Palestinian. We are victims. We love to show ourselves as victims rather than, as if we are ready to, to destroy Israel and all these, slogans. When it comes to Al-Katiba, Jenin Brigade, or Nablus, Lion, what is unique about these two entities? They are not politically oriented. I mean, not totally controlled by a political faction. Maybe in Jenin, Islamic Jihad used to dominate, but still many of the fighters came from Fatah. I know even some of them. Many of them have, Fatah background, but maybe their anger and, their anger with some of the Palestinian authority, push them, to that line. They are not politically oriented. They are not, factional. They consider the camp as, embryonic, as part of their resistance. But I believe maybe Israel is controlling to do Jenin or Nablus, but I think, many of these elements used to work individually, and I don't think any army cannot, control any Palestinian who is working as individual. Anyone can resist. The Israeli soldiers are, simply in the street. There is a huge anger in the hearts and in the minds of the Palestinian, and that might start, spark, maybe another, habba, or another, mini intifada. I think the conflict with Israel is open-ended. It will never end, especially, in West Bank. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Dr. Ayman. Thanks, Dr. Saad, for your intervention and your contribution. And thanks, Dr. Musa or the Moses, for your interesting questions about the way how actually I see your question is about the way how the Palestinian resistance is framed, generally speaking, in the Western audience. So the idea of resistance does not only belong to the Islamist resistance. This one thing, and then the other point I would like to raise or to highlight is the Palestinian resistance is not only, or it is actually shown mainly in Hamas, but the other Palestinian factions, including Fatah Party, has a long history of resistance. The major PLO factions have also, contributed and engaged in resistance in Palestinian resistance. These are um, some points, but also another major point I would like to raise here: the Palestinian resistance, including the national or the Islamist movement resistance, has never been framed as a way to resist, to reject, to fight against the Israeli Zionist colonial settler project. So you can say like Israeli Zionist colonial settler project. It's always seen in the Palestinian resistance, generally speaking, is only framed in a way to resist Israel. But then Israel has never been shown widely as an occupying country to the Palestinian land for the past decades. This is why we see in Western media the focus is on the Palestinian resistance, the military actions, firing rockets, with other, I don't know, other actions or other activities as a type of terrorist attacks. I think this is the major issue, is not only in the Western media, but also in the policies and politics of the Western governments, the way how they see Palestinian resistance as a type of terrorism, or actually it's not a type of, it is basically seen as terrorism. We never seen any Western leader, any Western politicians talking about the legitimate Palestinian right to resist the Israeli occupation or the Israeli siege and so on. So this is like the way how the Western governments, the Western politics, generally speaking, frame and represent the Palestinian resistance. And based on this frame, the Western governments draw their politics and policies in dealing and treating Hamas, basically. I think here what can be said about Hamas, not as not only Palestinian national movement, but also as an Islamist movement. And here I would say there is a misrepresentation about Hamas. So I don't want to be seen as defending Hamas, but let me clarify it. There is like mixing, I would say, or there is like how to say it يعني الخلط دكتور أيمن to merge the different concepts of the Islamist movements in the Middle East. For example, the ISIS or Daesh, HTS, Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and and also, but among these Islamist movements, or the general frame or the common frame and representation of these movements, including the HTS, is or these movements are considered and labeled are represented as terrorist movements, even though the HTS still. I know the U.S. administration has open discussion, dialogue, and so on with HTS, but still it is considered as a terrorist movement. And based on, but then for us as Palestinians, and then I'll come back to this question later, how do Palestinians view Hamas in which perspective? But I think there is like deliberately misconfusing concepts about the way how the Islamist movement. So commonly speaking, these movements are represented in a way to be terrorist, and then to be labeled as terrorist, then there is illegitimate, or any action, any activity conducted by these movements is considered as illegitimate. Also, regarding the current war, like how the Palestinian, let's say, actions considered as as resistance would lead to the way how Palestinians glorify and in the same time criticize. So it's like I don't say like there is division, but at least there is understanding of what the Islamist movements, and not only Hamas but also the Islamic Jihad in Gaza. So the I'll say that the attacks or the actions of October 7th have always been seen as a strategic action, at least by Hamas and by Islamic Jihad, as a way to exploit, because like in terms of strategic timing, the Russian-Ukrainian war has seen as a way to distract the international attention to the Palestinian case. Also, I would say there was like a clear message by the Palestinian resistance that enough is enough, and claiming that there was no political perspective to the end and as a solution for the Israeli blockade, and also the fear of Saudi Israeli normalization. So framing the Palestinian resistance as only in one way, to be only militarized, like in military sense, is a common frame. But also for the October 7th and for the Palestinian resistance in general, there have always been political agenda and political objectives, I would say. For example, the October 7th has clearly been seen as opposing to the new Middle East order, you can say, or the new Middle East a plan where resistance to normalization without Palestinians, the normalization plan between Saudi Arabia, the Gulf countries, and Israel. So in the Palestinian resistance, not only military, but also there is, let's say, political agenda. What makes difference between Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and the HS, حركة تحرير الشام, let's say both are considered as terrorist movements or terrorist organizations by the US, and most of the Western governments. But here, just got some notes. Of course, HTS denounced the concept of a global jihad, while Hamas still commits itself to the national Islamist resistance against Israel, of course. Uh, Also, I would say here for HTS, they claim that they distance themselves from ISIS, from Al Qaeda, from other radical movements, and they believed into or they adopted more moderate approach, while Hamas still continues its ideological military approach in resisting or in fighting Israel. Uh, I think the question how is Palestinians see Hamas is very, very interesting. And of course, yes, I do agree. And actually from my also from my research, and I would say it's really very interesting because I always see like how people how Western media represents and the views and the frames Hamas. But it's really very interesting to see how Hamas presents itself to the audience, to the Palestinians, and also to the world. So I would say here, Hamas always like presents itself as Palestinian national Islamist movement, that only has interests to fight Israel and its broader ideological military resistance is within Palestine. For Palestinians, I would say Hamas is always seen as a part of the community, is never seen as an external factor. And this would lead me just to compare it quickly, with ISIS. ISIS has been framed or composed or formed by fighters from different groups of guys of youth from different European countries, or it's not only European countries, but from different countries, and then they were encouraged, motivated to go to Syria. In contrary, Hamas is part of the Palestinian histories, Palestinian people is a very indigenous and integral part of the Palestinian community. Despite all the, let's say, disagreement with Hamas actions or with Hamas ideologies, with Hamas approach to fight Israel, many Palestinians criticize Hamas, and this is very legitimate and this is very normal, I would say. But still, I don't see any point that or any Palestinian would to reject Hamas as part of the Palestinian community. So it is, and of course, Hamas presents itself, as a socio-political and liberation movement. And actually, and this kind of representation has been adapted over time. For example, before 2007, when Hamas took over Gaza, before that, Hamas has paid much attention to the social aspect of the community rather than the politics. So it's always presented itself before 2007 as a social movement, as a national movement. Of course, it adopted the military movement, but it has not widely shown itself as a military movement or as a political movement, sorry. But then after 2007, after 2006, sorry, when Hamas was elected or won the Palestinian elections, and then in 2007, Hamas started to mobilize itself as a Palestinian national movement. And actually, this has been much clear in 2000, in 2020 and 2021 until 2022. During the the Israeli escalations, Hamas took the initiative to mediate the ceasefire between Israel and the Islamic Jihad, of course, indirectly through Qatar and Egypt. But at that time, Hamas played a major political role in the Palestinian politics. So, of course, after 2017, Hamas has presented itself or has started presenting itself as a sole political Palestinian movement in Gaza to represent the Palestinian political decision, actually. And this has, in another side, has been seen as a fight with the PLO, like who would be representing the Palestinian political decision, or who would make the Palestinian political decisions. Just to see in a brief and to conclude, Hamas has always seen is part of the Palestinian community, despite all the criticism, the rejection of some rejections of Hamas actions, disagreement with Hamas approach. Still, Hamas seen by the Palestinian community as part of as an integral part, and would never ever seen, as an external factor, as it has always seen or as considered for Al Qaeda or ISIS, even for HTS. Still, they represent themselves as part, of course, as a national movement, moderate Islamist movement, but still there is also some consideration, as Ayman mentioned, the interference of the external factor, either Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and then of course the support of the Western governments to HTS, and you see how the Western governments officials visited Syria. I think with the Trump administration, there might be also slightly some change because Trump's administration, as you know, opened the discussion, and now they negotiate directly the ceasefire agreement with Hamas, even without the acceptance or the let's say with, of course, with acceptance or without acceptance of Israel. But then Hamas is still, even though it is seen as a terrorist movement or as radical and ideological movement, still the U.S. administration opens the discussion, negotiates the ceasefire deal with Hamas. I have to say, Hamas is very pragmatic movement, from my understanding of Hamas, of the way, as also as a Palestinian, and they understand quite well how to deal with the international politics. I know many people don't agree with me, but at least this is how I see their pragmatics. So of course, in terms, they are totally principled, but they are not really strictly committed to these principles. Sorry if I took longer than time.
Thank you very much. These ideas are very interesting. We have 2 minutes. Maybe, Dr. Seth, can you share a finally reflection, please?
Yes, Keith. First of all, thank you very much for moderating this great session. I would like just to remind everybody that what we are facing right now is genocide management. The United States is still helping Israel in its genocide facilitation and management. Anyone who says no will be destroyed. Anyone who says yes in different formats will be accommodated politically. The people in the region who said yes, they're trying to bring them in within that framework. Like, as you said, the HTS in Syria, since they didn't say no, and they are part of the general plan of the Zionists for the region, then the United States was helping bringing them in. And to say this very clearly, this is what's happening. Once they say no, they will be destroyed. Like Hezbollah said no, they've been they try to annihilate them. Anyone, the Yemenis says no, they try to annihilate them. Anybody in Iraq says no, they would try to annihilate them. So far, even if the Egyptians, they say no to the ethnic cleansing, they would go to war with them. So that's what we are facing. Again, we need what's happened. The human toll in Palestine, in Gaza, is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's unbearable. It's unbelievable. Yet it's real. Now, I will need to stress. Part of the management of the occupation was the idea of the two-state solution. The two-state solution was marketed as the solution, and we had a peace process without peace for 32 years. 32 years we had a peace process without peace, and that was part of the occupation management. But now they have took it to a different level. Israeli government, the right-wing government, this whole Zionist project have reached to the point where we are the antithesis. As long as we are saying no, we need to be ethnically cleansed. They want to ethnically genocide and ethnic cleanse Gaza, and they want to ethnic cleanse the West Bank. How much they can go with it? Now I think the Western government and the international system have reached to the point where the scenes of the barbarism and the genocide cannot be tolerated within their governments. But they were silent. They were helping the Israelis, with weapons. Still, they're helping them with weapons. Okay? Even Europe, just yesterday, they want to review. They want to review. Can you imagine after 600 days of genocide, they still want to review the deal? So the issue of, I want to say something. You cannot end genocide now without ending apartheid. And ending apartheid has to be within a decolonizing context. That's why, first of all, as Professor Bamia said, some people believed in the one-state solution. But now there is so much blood that has been spilled. How can we coexist with these fanatical genocidal mindsets? So we still, even with all this bloodshed, we might enter even a phase of further bloodshed. Can you imagine? In the West Bank, and now, Ben Gavir going to now we are going to have, as I said, a model like the settlers attacking villages. We're going to have another Balkan, another Bosnia. So we need to, we really appreciate all the solidarity that we have from the international community, from people like you, from academics who are activists, because academia, and I really appreciate that what Musa and your colleagues, they're doing academia with high standards, but also with activism, academia with a soul. Academia, I cannot separate my activism and fight for social justice from my academic research or from my academic endeavors. So once again, thank you very much for this great meeting. And I really appreciate the comments by my colleagues, Wissam and Ayman. And inshallah, we meet again, because we are fragmented. We are fragmented. I'm here in Nablus, Wissam and Eugenia. I didn't see Ayman for a long, long time because of the checkpoints and the fragmentation. Thank you once again. And inshallah, we see you soon when we are closer to freedom and liberty, inshallah.
We hope this situation. Thank you. We will leave today with many ideas and reflection. I want to thank you everyone for their attention and presence in this forum, especially, obviously, our speakers for their passion and the generous time they shared with us. Thank you very much. And we look forward seeing in your upcoming session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias. Vamos a tener un descanso y nos vamos a ver. Si ustedes gustan regresar a las 2:30, por favor. para tener tiempo después de asistir a la última conferencia que hace en el auditorio, ¿verdad? Entonces, tomen tiempo, si hay agüitas o cosas frescas, porque ya son las últimas, y para que aguanten también a los chicos después de la comida. Muchas gracias.
Nos vemos al ratito. Muchas gracias.
Vamos al ratito más, Dani. Gracias.
Nos vemos. Gracias.
Hasta luego,
Shukran,
cuídense,
Ustaz.
nos vemos.
Thank you.
Provecho.
Daniel, come back again, yeah, Daniel. Musa, bring Musa with you.
Ustaz, كيف شكرا أستاذ.
يا حبيبي we miss you.
كل تمام في نابلس.
والله we waiting for you to eat كنافة إن شاء الله.